What an honor to be together on a beautiful day in the midst of spring to think about our relationship with the natural world. This is a 90-second introduction to just frame the larger narrative of Jewish environmental ethics, which is, of course, a vital field that many of us have been involved in for quite some time. And there are so many texts and sorry, I'm setting up a very quick slideshow soon. Half the time is going to be on computer here. I apologize. The larger context of what we're doing in terms of protecting God's creation and protecting all of God's creatures, which include the non-human as well as the human, and all of God's children, which include the less empowered humans as well as the more. We're in it for ourselves, we're in it for our future. Intergenerationality, all of these values are at play. And why is this, sorry, share screen. Okay. So much of it begins with some core values: unity, the earth's being God's, not ours, teaching humility, sustainability, the social justice angle, again, intergenerational justice, the law of not wasting, the practice of Shabbat. I wanted to draw our attention quickly to the last three of these 10 key themes in eco-Judaism, borrowed from the Sierra Club motto, but also straight from the book of Genesis: explore, enjoy, and protect. Right in our opening book at the foundation of our people's experience, we are told to experience the land, to be aware of the totality of the land and its goodness, of all that fills it, and then from that place to protect. That is precisely the nature of the subfield, Jewish outdoor food farming environmental education, chazon.org being the organizational leader in that, and Rabbi Daria Jacobs-Velde being one of the great experts in that, who has done this in multiple time zones and eco-regions and multiple Jewish communities, and with a little bit of each of those in her, and now blessing the community in Laurel, Maryland at Oseh Shalom. We are so honored to have Rabbi Daria for today's Reconstructionist gathering. We begin with Psalm 92. Daria.
So just a moment, whether you're inside or outside, to look around, to just connect to your breath, and just to sing for a moment. Magadlu masechaya meoram ku machshevotecha Magadlu masechaya meoram ku machshevotecha. So indeed, greatness is all around us when we stop and when we look, when we listen. I look forward to taking you on this little journey with me. Fred, are you back to the other PowerPoint? Oh, that seems to be sharing my. Oh. So as he gets started with the view there, we can go into the next slide, please. All right, so again, whether you're inside or you're outside, just to take in that expanse for a minute of something like that might have been the reality, was the reality for most of human existence, and not not the kind of living in our cells that we live in when we live in our houses so much, and then we go into our cars, and then we go into buildings. And so just to breathe in that spaciousness and expanse, that vision, a California scene that we had when we were out there in Zmanim, that we got to regularly go to a place like that, that was what our reality was like. Next. And so what I wanted to do to bring us to attention to today is really that we are like fish in the water, right? We forget that the present reality that we live in of houses and cars and buildings and AC was not actually the reality that we as human beings were built upon. Our tradition says in the morning, nikavim, nikavim, chalulim, chalulim, connecting to the openings in our bodies and the places where we are blocked in our bodies, that those openings and closings are key and are vital for our ability to actually live, certainly our ability to thrive. And when we step back and get on the balcony and look at what has been going on for us as humans in the last, certainly a couple decades, even 100 years or so, we can see that there's some serious blockages, and no wonder we're in the present situation that we are in. So next. And so in fact, right, not surprisingly, if we have been created in a certain way, developing our all the neurology and all the connections in our bodies have been developed in a certain way over time, over millions of years, the fact that children are now spending more than 70 hours a week on screens regularly greatly impacts who they are as human beings. And even us as adults, right? Especially at this time of coronavirus, we maybe thought we were spending a lot of time on screens before, all the more so now, and there are real consequences in that. Our brains cannot have caught up even before this most intense time, their impacts on, and real consequences, because our brains were developing over millions of years in a certain way, and now our present reality is so drastically different. Next. So what happens when we don't get this nature time that we have grown, that we developed for, right? And so this is the kind of just jumping right into it. This is the reality of what we see. Some pretty awful situations that we can recognize, though, in people around us. We can recognize in the news. We can recognize in the kind of violence that there exists in our world now. Depression, stress, anxiety, right? Overwhelm, problems with our biorhythms and sleeping, all the different issues about how do we get better sleep and why are we not sleeping well? Well, maybe it has to do with our nature time. And certainly sensory processing issues that are pretty extreme. Next. And so that lack of connection, right, the disconnection, that when we stop to realize that we are fish living and swimming in a water of actual disconnection, and the prior slide of all those different issues are just signs that we're deeply disconnected. And so when we can get on the balcony and see that level of disconnection, we can see kind of just the whole scheme in a helpful way. So, right, so these statistics come from the CDC and from one of the people I've studied with, an occupational therapist, Kathleen Lockyer. 1 in 54 children are on the autism spectrum. We look around at children and we count 1 child out of every 10 has ADHD. 1 in 6 has symptoms significant enough to concern their parents, so that their parents want to seek medical advice and get a diagnosis. 1 in 5 in situations of poverty. This is the kind of reality that our children are living in right now. And it's, again, we're fish in the water. We take it for granted. And okay, well, how can we make sure that they've got executive functioning classes at school and that they get a little mindfulness time at school? That's huge and that's great. And, these ways that we're not naming the issue is perhaps something so much greater than these symptomatic ways that we are addressing the issue, right? If polio crisis, 1 in 2,700 was affected, we're not talking about these situations that our children are facing. 1 in 10, 1 in 5. And here these statistics continue around myopia, that children, you know, and not only just children, but adults also, right? That perhaps our eyes aren't only getting bad because we're looking at screens a lot, but it's because we aren't spending time outside. Purely just outside time, cloud time counts. Prescription drugs. Oh, of course we have prescription drugs. Thank God we have prescription drugs. They're very helpful. I'm not knocking prescription drugs. And I'm saying, hey, what is going on here? That 70% of Americans are taking 1 a day, 50% are taking 2 a day, that preschoolers are the fastest growing, one of the fastest growing markets for prescription medication. 1 in 6 teenagers is taking prescription drugs to change their mood, to get high. 70% of teens, this is self-reported around these teens. There was a well-done study where the teens are self-reporting that around anxiety and depression. Why are our children suffering in this way, and what are we doing about it? Right, and in addition, just our senses. In the last 20 years, we can't see so many different colors. We no longer have that ability to distinguish different colors, to distinguish different sounds. From 350 colors, now we can see 130 and distinguish them. Sounds, right? And this is 20 years. We're not talking about, oh, way back, 300 years ago, 100 years ago. In 20 years, look at these changes that have made the loss of our sensory awareness. And so certainly it's not just our physical conditions that are greatly affected, but also, in Judaism, we can see significant challenges in the rate of affiliation, and also with the Siddur, right, with the prayer book. It's my own journey to the rabbinate. It's like, what is this God? What's going on with this, with this liturgy? What is happening here? It's really can be very challenging to try to have a connection and to try to understand, why should the words of my ancestors and my ancestors' ancestors have anything to do with me today? So maybe it's not only medication, maybe it's not medication at all in some cases. Maybe we just need to get outdoors. Right? Because again, back to that biology, we were born wired for connection. Our biology, our neurology is built upon the fact that we have time to understand and to know ourselves, to be in deep relationship with one another, to really know our sense of place, to know the trees, to know the plants that can help us and those that are poisonous, and to have a sense of awe and wonder and connection. So how did we live, right? Just kind of going back in time, right? We had time to be, we had time to notice, because whether we were in the wilderness, in the midbar, in the, the wilderness, whether we were in ancient Israel, whether we were in villages, in cities, we were in Jewish community. We, of course, there was no central heat, there was no AC, so we knew heat, we knew cold, we knew vulnerability. We went slowly, right? By foot, donkey, oxen, horse, bicycle, right? Trains, of course, traveled so much slower than we drive, right? Trains would drive in the 1860s. The military would budget 15 miles an hour for a train, right? We can bike downhill at least, right? Maybe some of us on a regular way, 15 miles an hour. So we knew vulnerability, we knew birth and sickness and death. We knew our dependence on the sun and the rain. We couldn't just, turn on the spigot on the hose that's hooked up. We knew how much we were part of something larger. Right? We were in small groups, in natural settings, and that is what our neurobiology is expecting. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to include the name of that professor at the University of Notre Dame, who said it might even be critical to developing a normal, morally functioning human being is to have those kinds of connections to natural setting and to place. Right? In Judaism as well, Todah, right? We are the Yehudim. Yehudim has the same root as the word Todah, thank you, gratitude, acknowledgement. And it comes in our liturgy in different ways. In the morning when we say Moda, Moda Ani. In the Amidah when we say Modim Anachnu Lach. It's opportunities to be in wonder, to recognize, to appreciate. And our prayers are connected, of course, deeply to the sun's rising and setting, and our holidays to the sun, the moon, the stars. When you open the prayer book, that is what you can see, a connection to the cycles of birth and death, of joy and ease, of heartbreak and difficulty, of being again vulnerable. And we're vulnerable because we're connected. We know we can't live forever, and we know we can't control everything. And we all, even now, know that. And yet there's a way, because we can control so much about our environment, that we forget that, and that we act in that way that is that's based on that forgetfulness. And it leads to jaded youth and disconnected adults, though. Right? But our system of our Jewish years, we have 4 Jewish New Years, right? One, I'm sorry that the font's a little small in some of this, but we have a Jewish New Year every single season, traditionally. So every single season. And here's again another slide showing the seasons and the different holidays that, that come throughout the year. So Richard Louv is an author. I mentioned him again in the resources. He talks about vitamin N. Perhaps it's vitamin N. The nature connection is what really, that's what we're missing. And you can see perhaps now how it can revolutionize not only our physical health, our mental health, but also our connection to Judaism and to the earth. As we connect to the pathways that have been developed, right, so that we can, again, just what does it mean to be alive? In Deuteronomy, we're reminded this is not too hard for us to be deeply connected. This instruction, it's not too baffling. It's not beyond reach. It is very close to you. It's in your mouth. It's in your heart. It's right outside your door. And if you can't get outside, it's right outside your window. And if you can't get to a window, maybe there's a flower that you can bring into your home that somebody can give you. Maybe there's a plant in a pot that you can bring inside, that you can just look at it and connect, make space. Again, our morning liturgy lifts up all sorts of connection to the natural world and creation. Every day you create the world again. Every day we can be created again by connecting to creation. The high holidays, return to the land of your soul, we're told, to who we are. Return to what we are, to where we are, born and born again, born and reborn. When we open the Siddur, we can look, maybe the God language gets in the way for a lot of us. Look for the nature language. Look for that language that where our ancestors were connecting because they were living in a world where they had no other choice than to be deeply connected to the natural world. And see what happens when you start to make those choices. And so some practices. I said that there'd be some theory. That was a big part of the theory. And now some practices. And I know it went quickly, but I wanted to make sure that there's time for Q&A and just kind of do a big download. So again, we can quiet our bodies. That was I was speaking quickly, a lot of slides, a lot of information. So just a moment to come back to where we are. And perhaps if you're outside or whether you're inside, there's something that you might normally overlook around you. You can go to the next slide. Give us something other than words to look at now. But again, hopefully you're not looking even at the slide if you don't need to. But maybe there's some wind or bark on a plant in your house, in your home, or outside your window, or outside. If you're in the outdoors itself, maybe there's a tree or a squirrel or a bird. And just open your senses. And allow a sense of wonder and curiosity to emerge. Just wonder and curiosity. What don't you know that you're curious about? As if you were a small child. Allow a sense of awe, of mystery, appreciation for the moment. And if you want to put into the chat box anything that you're noticing and that you're wondering about or curious about. What have you noticed in these moments? Yeah, wondering if there's birds singing. There certainly are a lot of birds in my background here. I'm not sure if those are coming forth or if they're birds in your own home. But you know, how wondrous. All these different birds, each with their own song, some that can imitate others. Yeah. Ariel Gottlieb talks about there's a bird's nest above the drain pipe, right? Oh my gosh, a bird's nest. Like, how do they build that nest? Oh, like, how do they stick it together? They have their two little feet, but they got to be standing with their feet, and then they're carrying whatever they're carrying in their mouths. How do they stick it together? Yeah, overlapping tree branches. You know, it's just the way that the tree branches grow and they separate and they overlap. And then if you're looking at like multiple trees, just that architecture and design and flow. Yeah, thank you, Richard. Steve, good question. You know, the mind noise. Oh my gosh, the mind noise. How can we have a better appreciation of nature? Steve, was there something that you connected to during those moments?
Just thinking about what's outside. Spent a lot of time outside lately. But even in sitting outside and trying to enjoy everything, it seems like my mind is going a million miles an hour.
Yeah, because that is the world that we're in, and so a couple different things. One is it's a muscle, right? Just like we might go to the gym or do different weights. That muscle of concentration and letting things go is a muscle to exercise. That certainly at Oseh we try to create opportunities for that, but it's a muscle that needs support to say, oh, like, oh my gosh, like for me. Thank you. A little lemon balm sitting right next to me, right? Like there's some lemon balm right here. And just stopping to notice for however long, just give ourselves a pat on the back if we're like, oh, I'm looking at the lemon balm and it's amazing. Like those different veins, right? And how it gets the light, on and on, right? We can go talk about how amazing it is. Let's say I notice it for like a split second and then I'm like, oh, wait, but my to-do list and then the children. As soon as I notice that, I just try to, is whenever it is, if it's half an hour later, if it's 30 seconds later, if it's 5 seconds later, I can just come back again to hopefully what's in front of me. And the more that I can practice that loop and have compassion for myself, that when my mind is getting distracted, that's the practice, right? But our senses, we are so in our heads. We're so in our heads, and that is why we are so disconnected from our bodies, and we have all these mental and physical health problems because of it, and spiritual health problems as well, right? And the Siddur isn't making any sense because we're disconnected from our bodies. And so these simple practice of just stopping. Can I feel them? I see trees. Okay, wait, the trees are way up high. They're moving. That's the wind up there. Is there wind down here? Oh yeah, I see the plant right there. That plant right there is moving. I'm on that level. I do. I feel the wind. And then the mind goes, but that's okay, right? Like every moment that we can work to exercise those muscles of awakening our senses is going to be building and building and building, of just noticing when I'm going, if I am driving different places or getting outside of my door for a moment, going for a walk, just, okay, I'm going to go for a walk and I'm going to try to listen to the birds and see how many birds. I give myself a challenge. Can I hear those birds? What's the quietest bird I can hear? Right? And there's all sorts of different exercises and challenges like that. And And though the mind has a lot of legitimate things that it's holding as well. So, one of my own personal practices, I find that sometimes I don't take the time during the day to to debrief from the day and to let out what's in my mind. And so I have a pad of paper by my bed because Rabbi Daria's special technique of how to write in the dark and a mostly legible way is, at 2 a.m. sometimes that's when I'll wake up and like, oh, my mind's got a lot going on, and I just write it down and I write it down and I write it down. And then, and so you want to have a space to responsibly hold what we are holding in our heads, as we also are making space to exercise our senses and to reconnect to our senses, so that everything can make sense and we can be aligned again. Carolyn had a comment of, just putting our hands on our stomach, right? Again, returning to our breath. So we've got our external senses we can return to with our visual, our auditory, the birds, the wind on us, feeling the earth under us, going barefoot, and also just our breath is always with us. And so hopefully either, through our nose or our bellies, putting our hands there and just noticing our breath rising and falling. So there's, again, so many different wonderful techniques for connecting to nature, but I just wanted to give you that one right there. Some moments for that. I was talking to a congregant recently, and he said on his walks that he's been doing regularly, he's been able to notice the trees leafing out more. And so in that piece of, oh, right, it's not like winter and the trees are all bare and then suddenly it's summer, or it's late spring and the trees are all full, but just noticing the trees slowly starting to open. Oh, look at that tree. Oh, I can start to see the green fuzz. Oh, now it's a little thicker. Now, oh my gosh, like look at these, right? All these trees with all their leaves, and just, it's been so great in this time of coronavirus when people are able to slow down a bit more, to be able to notice that moment, the miracle and wonder of every single moment. There's so much there, right? This slide reminds us of that. We have a shehachiah and we have a bracha just for that, to bring us back to the moment of right now, to the gift of right now, to the wonder and awe and mystery of right now. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, or Eloheinu ruach haolam, wind, spirit, sovereign of the worlds. Shehecheyanu v'kiyamanu v'higiyanu lezman hazeh. You've brought us to this time when, like, the lemon balm is just bursting out right next to me, and sense of smell, of course. Right, we know when we're cooking, ooh, I smell the broccoli's getting overdone. Oh, something's baking in the oven and it's about ready, right? But our smells outside as well. And the wet weather, how can we, it's especially acute, how can we awaken in those ways? Shabbat is our special time, right? Between Shabbat and the tefillah that we opened with, how marvelous and wondrous is the world around us. Magadlu, Masechaya, Meod amku machshavotecha. Hallelujah. Kiddush. Right, Kiddush, the Friday night Kiddush, the Shabbat morning Kiddush. Kiddush reminds us exactly of creation, the miracle of the world around us, and reminds us that we can become slaves. The Friday night Kiddush, right? That we can become slaves. We are avadim sometimes to Pharaoh, and the Pharaoh is us, but we have the chance for Yetziat Mitzrayim. The exodus from Egypt does not just happen from Passover. Every week, can we take an hour, half an hour, 24 hours, 25 hours? How long can we take for Shabbat, for Shavat v'yinafash, for stopping all that doing and connecting to ourselves, yinafash, through The fact that in 6 days our sacred story tells us the world was created, the birds and the trees and the lemon balm and you and me and everything. In 6 days, it's amazing. Where is that awe and wonder and mystery? It's any moment that we allow it to, let alone hopefully on Shabbat. Right? The sky, the glorious sky, whether it's all cloudy right now, or we start to look at it and we're like, oh wait, there's a little gray there. It's not just all white, or it's completely blue, or how fast the clouds are moving, right? Our liturgy is full of these kinds of texts. So what might we do? Again, I know I went through this quickly, but I wanted to kind of do a big download so we can continue to get some questions like Steve was hinting at. And so one thing that we can do also, there's meditation that Rabbi Josh, my co-rabbi at Oseh Shalom, and I lead. He leads a weekly meditation, and I lead one before my chanting service, the third Shabbat of the month. And every Thursday, though, 3:45 p.m. Eastern Time, you're invited to join me for a short activities connecting to Judaism and the outdoors and the natural world, and just a little piece by piece exploring that, unpacking that, making space for that in our lives.
Can you repeat the time for that?
Yes, 3:45 p.m. Eastern Time. And you can find the link to that on the Oseh Shalom website, as well as reconstructingjudaism.org under their Recon Connect. It's under the resources under pandemics. It's like resources for the pandemic, and then you can see Recon Connect, and the link should also be there. At this time, you'll need to register in advance to get the password. So the link is on our website and is the Reconstructing Judaism site, but you'll need to register in advance to get the password. It's free and open to everybody who wants to be helpful, and unfortunately at the Zoom time, not everybody wants to be helpful as they access Zoom. So just make sure you register a couple days in advance to get the password. But every week we've been doing that, and I would look forward to your joining. Right? Share with others. Talking about the experiences that you have is a really important part of community. Right? Normally we would be in community and we would regularly have numbers of people's aunties and uncles and grandparents and children, and we'd be able to share with one another. Oh my gosh, did you hear that bird? It was crazy. What was it doing? I don't know, but wow, I'm so glad I'm alive at this moment. Baruch atah Adonai, right? And we get to say, wow, and just connect to it. And we don't have to remember any part of Hebrew. We can just say, wow, that's amazing. Because that's the inspiration behind all our prayers, behind the Hashemayim Supreme Kvodel, behind that Psalm 19, like, whoa, do you see how fast those clouds are moving? Or, oh my gosh, did you hear that thunder? Do you see their dark clouds over there? But it's still blue over there. And right, and in the West, when you get to see the vast expanse and see, like, there it's raining and there it's not raining, and I get to see that. Coming from the East Coast, I was blown away when I first got to see, like, you can see the clouds and the rain there, and there's a dividing line, right? So talking about this with others is a very important part of the process. And getting outside is, again, as much as you can. Going barefoot as much as you can. And again, if that means you're opening your window and you're listening, or you're opening your window and you're feeling the colder air if it's colder, or you're feeling the warmer air if it's really warm, just breathing into that, feeling that, connecting to our ancestors, listening to the birds. Oh my gosh, bird language is a whole amazing, miraculous thing that many of us have no idea about, that actually people can listen to birds. And I know I was reading a story in one of these resources recently from one of my teachers, that somebody who'd studied bird language for a while, and he was not even like one of the people who's really, who is, like, he's not one of the Bushmen who really knows bird language, right? Somebody, an American who studied bird language for a while, was able to help the neighbors find the lost dog that was a mile away. So when we listen to birds, yes, many of us know about people who go birding and they watch birds and they know birds, but there's a way that if our senses are attuned and we have mentors and support for learning, we can know Oh, that's what the birds are saying. The real twittering is happening, and there's real communication happening in different places, right? So getting outside with those pieces and opening the Siddur. Again, the Reconstructionist movement has made the Siddur available online for our services at Oseh Shalom. People access it, and so, you know, flipping through the Siddur online, or if it's a traditional Siddur, it doesn't matter, right? Psalm 92 is Psalm 92, and Uftuvo Mechadesh, the blessing about like creation being renewed every day anew, is that's the traditional liturgy. So you can open any siddur that you have and just scan through it and look like, where is there something about nature in there, and what's something that speaks to me in there, and share about it. Right, it's part of our family practices during the Shabbat meal, or sometimes when we're standing there right after candle lighting or during kiddush. Like, what's something wonderful that I noticed in the natural world this week? How can I honor creation, not just because I sang Kiddush Vishamru on Shabbat day, or the Fuller Kiddush on Friday night, and I said, Maaseh V'Reishit, I said, oh, the world is amazing, but how can I honor it by sharing something that I noticed with loved ones? And again, JOFFEE, that Jewish Outdoor Food Farming Environmental Education organizations have, there's a lot of different things going on in the world today about on that level. And so here is some of the top things going on you can find between Pearlstone and Isabella Friedman, and Wilderness Torah and Chazon, and Teva learning programs through Chazon, certainly, right, Camp Eden Village, Kojo. There's a lot of online things, even these resources that, you know, would have been gathering in person. Now there's a Pearlstone has amazing resources that anybody can access because of this time period. People are making these online platforms accessible. So go check out these different places and see what else is happening around the country, coast to coast. Again, some different rabbis, you can check out their writings and teachings around Judaism and the natural world. Yeah, we can definitely make this share this PowerPoint. And so the nature connection world, the deep nature connection, or strategic nature connection as it's called, these are secular resources, but have certainly informed my learning and my teaching, and they're just amazing, right? So Kathleen Lockyer, who I mentioned before, that's the rxoutside.com, amazing educator and individual who I've studied with. Primal Nate, he's doing some online teachings as well right now. He's got a great book called Primal, Why We Long to Be Wild and Free. And then again, so childrenandnature.org, Tracker School, there's Less Screen, More Green.org. That's Richard Louv talks about that. He says, the more screen time we have, the more green time we need. And so again, so these are some of those books that I was referencing, from Nate Summers to Richard Louv's. They aren't in alphabetical order, but right, Richard Louv is just amazing. He's the one who coined the word nature deficit disorder, saying that, you know, these different issues that we that I was mentioning before in those statistics, it's coming about because of nature deficit disorder. And it's not just for children, it's for adults as well. And there's lots of resources that he has provided you can find in his books. We'll do question and answer in just a minute. I'll just finish getting through these last couple slides. Again, some other resources that people can certainly buy some resources and start checking out some websites online. Right, so again, yeah, it's amazing resources out there. And so just, you know, ending with some gratitudes before Q&A for those teachers of mine in the strategic nature connection world: John Young and the H. Shields Institute, Kathleen Lockyer, Nate Summers, Richard Louv. Reconstructionist Jewish world. Certainly I'm a product of the rabbinical college there, and very appreciative to my teachers through there, and as well as connected to the renewal Jewish world. Very important teachers there that I've learned with Rabbi Chaim Herring. There's Manim community that we started with some others in California that we had for 3 years. And certainly our Oseh Shalom community that we are serving right now and in partnership with, and so many other teachers beyond what I can list here. I'll respond to Q&As in just a moment, but final gratitudes to my parents for supporting my connection with Judaism and the natural world, both of those separately and together, going mountain climbing with my father as a young girl and just getting outside, and to my life partner and co-rabbi Josh Jacobs-Velde, and my wonderful children Shlomo and Zev. And finally, right, to the natural world. And to all my ancestors and the Jews who have come before me. I don't in any way pretend to be the expert on all this, the sole expert, or to have created this, that this comes from far beyond me and long before me. Those who have created and adapted the rituals, the language that can connect us to the natural world, to a sense of physical place, to connect us to one another, to ourselves, sense of wonder, awe, mystery, and a sense of the divine. So, deep gratitudes. Now some Q&A. So, I guess I'll jump in with some of the cues that are in the group chat first, and then if people maybe want to raise their hand, and Rabbi Fred can facilitate that part. But I'll just start with right. So, how do masks cut us off from nature? How to open to the natural world while being masked? Good question, right? We're supposed to go out in the world and we're supposed to be masked, and but we don't need to go very far to connect. And I wonder, like on our porches, by our windows, in our backyard, we take 5 minutes a day, right? And if you're not speaking, if you can mute yourself, please. I hear somebody's got extra activity there. We don't need to go far. We don't need to be doing anything to connect to the natural world. One of the practices in the strategic nature connection world is to find what they call a sit spot, or in Judaism we might call it hitbodedut, right? That we have this practice of going out and praying by ourselves in nature, and we can go for a walk if that's helpful. We can find a magic place somewhere else, but we can also find a magic place just outside our door. And again, maybe it's on our front steps, maybe it's in the backyard, but finding a place to just sit and notice. 5 minutes a day, 10, 15 minutes a day. How long do we have? Do it an hour a day, hour and a half a day. If you can go at the same time every day, you get to know who are the animals that come at that time. Who are the birds? Who are my friends that are coming at that regular time? And as I mentioned about the congregant who was talking about the leafing out of the trees that he got to notice on his walks, we probably don't need to notice, go anywhere to notice those different changes. Hopefully for each of us, there's some piece of the natural world that's right outside our door that we can look at. And even if there's not that, there's the air, there's a slice of the sky, and just opening to that with our senses and closing our eyes. And just practicing that kind of opening of the senses as a practice to help us connect. Deborah Shine has a resource as well about inspiring wonder, awe, and empathy and spiritual development in young children. So she's found her wearing a mask helps her be aware of her breathing, right? So yes, another resource.
Just so everyone knows, next to the chat or the more, there's a little icon of a hand, and if you click it, I will see that and call on you.
Or if you go to participants, you can also raise your hand that way. And I'm not sure if this is on Facebook Live, if people are chatting there, how they, if someone's monitoring, if any questions that way.
While you're formulating, just one beautiful amplification. Rabbi Meir in the Talmud says, say 100 blessings every day, which if you average over a waking life is about every 10 minutes. So grateful that Rabbi Daria led us in the exercise of noticing and paying attention And Shehechianu is one. There's also Shekacha lo ba'olamo, just blessed is the one who has it like this in the divine world, or Oseh Ma'aseh Bereshit, the one who made those wonders of creation and continues to renew them. So whatever blessing comes to you, if you can manage every 10 minutes of your life, that moment of awareness, you can kvetch for 9, but then the 10th minute, just as Rabbi Daria taught, the mindfulness, back to connection, back to tradition, back to gratitude.
You know, I also want a big shout out to Reconstructing Judaism and to Jackie Land for organizing all of this, and something, and to Fred for facilitating this piece as well. So it's really such an honor to be able to be doing this and to be sharing some of what I've been learning and thinking about and experimenting with and playing with all of you. So yeah, there was a comment before about a little squirrel, right, that somebody noticed, and it's really just so, again, so wonderful to be noticing the different animals. And my son was sitting outside, he's like, oh, like I'm connecting to that little squirrel, he's my friend now. And how can we remember that the world around us, they're our friends, the birds are our friends, the ants are our friends, right? The worms are our friends, and the lemon balm, sometimes we don't like what our friends have to share, like the mosquitoes that have not yet come out in full force here, but it's a little hard sometimes to enjoy being outside as much when the mosquitoes are wanting to have such a share of me and my family, but so how can we prepare ourselves? Excellent question. How do we find connection and appreciation when the weather is not ideal, when it's below freezing or in a heat wave? So we, of course we want to be safe. We want to be safe. If it's in a heat wave and it's not safe to be outside for 5 minutes, don't go outside and stay inside. But I wonder if in a heat wave, it might be still safe to go outside for 5 minutes and to just open to that experience. We have the gift of going inside in 5 minutes from now, or really less if we really can't stand it. But our ancestors didn't. And just, connecting to the strength that they had, the power that they had, the resilience that they had, that's in us too. I wonder what they would have said when it was a heat wave. Do they feel miserable about it? Or because it was their reality, was it just, it was less comfortable, but I wonder if, because they couldn't control it, if they were less miserable or less uncomfortable, really. Right? So just opportunities to ask. And when it's cold, it's easier. Because, or I don't know if it's easier, it's different at least, because we can bundle up. Many of us have the good fortune of having very warm clothes that we can climb into, and we can take a cup of hot tea and we can take it outside and warm it under our hands. We can take some blankets and put them over our lap, and we can sit outside. I know people who do that practice of, at least 20 minutes a day, and they live up in northern parts of Canada. And, it's very cold. It's much colder than where we are in Maryland, and or where, again, people are from all around the country here. So it's certainly possible to do it if we want. And, I've been doing the Judaism in Nature this past 2 weeks. It was raining. So know that if it's raining or if it's too cold or too hot, I'm still going to be going outside with whoever's on the call, and invite you to, as much as you're able, to just go and to experience it. And one of my favorite times in California was Manim. There's so many wonderful times being there, but I had an after school Jewish nature connection program for children, and there was some mud in the yard. And the joy of the children in the mud, oh my gosh, I know it's messy, but really, next time you see some mud, whatever you can do to get your toes in it, your hands in it, just squish around. They were like sliding, and they're like, oh my gosh, it's like a slide. And just like the texture you realize when you go barefoot, and then you can go on something, a pavement, right, or grass. We have so many nerve endings in our feet that are so cut off when we aren't barefoot in our homes, right? Even in socks in our homes. If it's not, again, don't do something that's not safe. If it's slippery and it's not safe to do it. But if you can get little grips done on your socks, or whatever support we need to be able to awaken our senses, So we can have moments of less comfort, perhaps. Maybe we're a little hot, we're a little cold. Fortunately, we live in a time when we can easily go back to our narrow comfort zone. There is an International Mud Day. Oh, great. Wonderful. So,
just as every day is Earth Day, every day can be Mud Day by Rabbi
yes,
Daria's teaching.
indeed.
We are about 5 minutes from the end of the hour, so I want to invite anyone who's got a question almost formulated to put it in the chat box or raise your hand. And if Daria, you want to offer a concluding thought after we give people 1 more minute, we'll move toward wrapping up. These resources will be available, and please share them, you who are on live, with those who aren't, and keep this Torah spreading.
You know, just one more thing about the mosquitoes that, you know, mosquitoes and ticks. When we came back to the East Coast, I'm from the East Coast, but deer ticks were not at the level that they are. When I was living here before, I was like, oh, to go back to the days when I was in Boston growing up as a kid, to just have a gross dog tick, right? Like just a dog tick that's disgusting and like full and like, attention that dog, we got to take it off. To go back to those days when my life and my children's lives weren't in danger from deer ticks. And so what does that remind us? If there's a lot of mosquitoes or if there's a lot of deer ticks, okay, well, am I choosing to live in an area that's swampy, where it's their habitat and I'm going into their space? Is the thing to know. And if I'm not, and there just are a lot of mosquitoes now, well, why? Why are there deer ticks now in the way that there weren't? Oh, because actually the land isn't being managed the way that it might be, right? Or all sorts of different pieces around climate change, around land management. There's a lot of different messages for us in that. How, and then of course, how am I responsible? And how am I able to step into the power and the responsibility I do have to care for the earth, to tend the earth, so that we can be in deep partnership and we can all flourish. So thank you all so much. This has been a real pleasure to be with you all. And I thought we just might close then with Magad Lu one more time. We can't have enough of greatness and recognizing the gifts that there are of being alive at this time. It's gardening in the earth, huge health properties, right? Going barefoot, getting our hands in the soil, like it releases toxins. You can go and look up around like toxin research and like how we get toxins in our bodies, because we aren't detoxifying by putting our hands, you know, in the earth, in this neutralizing component that, you know, that's environment that supports us when we are aware of it and living in balance and living deeply connected to it. So, Magad Lu Maaseh Chaya Me'or Amku Machshevotecha Magad Lu Maaseh Chaya Me'or Amku Machshevotecha. Once more. Magad Lu Maaseh Chaya Me'or Amku Machshevotecha. Hallelujah. Thank you all.
So, thank you, Rabbi. Oh, sorry, John, would you like to say the thank yous?
No, I just wanted to say what you were going to say, Fred. Thank you, Rabbi Daria, for this presentation and for doing such a wonderful job in presenting your learning day of learning course. Thank you, Rabbi Daria.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Here, here. And a thank you to all of you who are interested enough to be on this and tuned in enough to find what there is to bless, even in the midst of challenge and adversity, and to lift it up in so many of the ways that Rabbi Daria has taught us. Remember also the appreciation for this larger Reconstructionist community that we find ourselves in, that is so broadly supportive of these principles, has been at every level since Mordechai Kaplan was writing about what Rabbi Daria was teaching, the nature basis of the holidays in 1937, meaning of God in modern Jewish religion, and how the earth is sort of one collective organism, the Gaia hypothesis in the foreword to the 1945 prayer book. We are standing on the shoulders of giants, and to have people like Daria helping to push this forward and expand the new frontiers as we each tune in to the majesty, the fragility, but the brilliance of creation and our indispensable place within it. We are advancing Torah with every one of these conversations and every one of these moments. So thank you and blessings to all.
Yes.